Hello.
Hello.
Something you may not know about me is that I love food. I love everything about food. All right? I love eating food. I love talking about food. And my favorite combination ever is eating food with really good friends and talking about what we're going to eat next. Right? Anybody else? There's a few, right? There's something about that is just so delicious. I believe that my love of food came from my relationship with my Grandma Ann. My Grandma Ann was an amazing cook and baker. And we would visit her house. I grew up in New York City, and we would visit her home every Friday evening. And I remember pulling up and scurrying into the house and down the hallway. And the minute the door opened, it was like a sensory explosion, right? I could smell the food. I would get into the kitchen, and I would actually see all of the cookies on the table right to the right of me. And then on the stove over here was a pot of chicken soup simmering, and my grandma was in the corner, and she was chopping something. And even though I found out in later years I would always sneak a cookie off that table, I thought I was sneaking. I was never sneaking. She always knew. And I remember talking to Grandma one time and asking her, "So, Grandma, what is it about your cooking that is so delicious?" Because, and you know how kids say things, right? I said to her, because every time Mommy makes something that you make, it's not nearly as good as yours. So she laughed, and she put her hand on her hip, as my grandma would do, and she gave me the little finger wag, and she said, "Bubala, what makes my food so delicious are two things." She said, "One, I only use the best ingredients for you and the family," and she would pinch my cheek every time. And two, she said, "When I'm preparing the food, I see the family around the table enjoying each and every bite." And something about that lasted. I mean, I was a little girl when we had that conversation, and something about that really hit me about our life being like a big cookbook, right? If you think about it, every day we choose a different recipe. Would you say that's true? Right? And we choose a different recipe, and depending on the quality of the ingredients we use, impact how delicious our day is going to be. So that kind of stuck with me, and I started paying more attention to the ingredients that I was putting into my recipe on a regular basis. And for the early parts of my life, I mean, I was loved, but there was something missing for me that I was looking for outside of myself. I actually call those my sex, drug, and rock and roll years, because that seemed to bring me joy at the time. But it wasn't the type of joy that stuck around, right? And so I ended up on this quest for sustainable joy, that joy that lasted after the party was over, or after the brownie was gone, or after the shoes had a little scuff in them, because I do like shoes as much as I like food. So those two things go together for me. So I started looking for that. And on that quest was this thing called a relationship. Right? Here I was in my mid-30s, I had not been married, and I stumbled upon this man that I had actually known for about 10 years. And so this man came into my life, and he became an ingredient in my recipe. His name is Matt. And here's the thing about Matt. Matt loves to cook. So, of course, I attracted that. I believe I manifested that easily because I love food, right? He loves to cook. I love to eat. The thing about Matt is we look at recipes in a very different way, right? My recipes, I know what the ingredients need to be, right? And that I believe bring me joy. But when he cooks, literally, when he cooks, he doesn't use a recipe. He just uses a little bit of that and a little bit of this and creates something delicious. Now, when I saw him starting to do that, I would call him Chef Matt, and I actually had a concept that I was using with my clients, and I gave it to him. And I gifted it to him, and I'm now going to gift it to each of you as well, because this is what I believe Matt does and that we all do. So your gift that you will leave here with today is an MSU. You can now put this behind your name. Whatever your name is, Shay Ali, MSU. You now have an MSU. Because here's the thing. We all make shit up, right? Everything is made up. Just like Matt puts the ingredients into the recipes, he makes it up as he goes. So as we all make stuff up, think about the words we use in our recipes. So I love words, I love food, I love shoes. Those are my three things right there. That are my top three. So I want to share some words with you that you could use with your MSU that I think we already use, but they may be different meanings that you've not heard of before. So first, I don't know about here in the UK, but I know in the States that every time I run into somebody and we talk and I say, "How are you? How are you, Ben?" And the first thing he would say, that Ben may say, is, "I'm busy. I'm busy, busy, busy." And I think I've heard a few of you say that when you came in. Busy, if we think about busy with an MSU, if we're making stuff up, busy, you are busy because you say yes, right? Think about that. Because you say yes. So if busy is good for you, fantastic. But if busy isn't serving you, then in what you're making up, I invite you to look at what are you saying yes to and what are you saying no to? Because when you're saying yes to the good things, that's when you have more joy and when your recipe becomes super delicious. So that's one thing I know that we make up all the time, is this place around busyness. The other thing we make up, and this gets tied into busyness, is how we make our decisions on what we're going to say yes to and what we say no to. And one of the ways that we do that may be honoring our values, right? Coming from a place of love. When we're coming from a place of love, what I believe, what I make up about that, is that we are living our values every day. So when you know what your values are, what's important to you, what brings you the most fulfillment, and you weave that into your life, you can come from a place of love, joy, and have that deliciousness that we're all looking for. So uncovering those values and making decisions based on that, that comes from love. Now, the opposite of love is fear, right? Fear, and some of you may have heard this already, is about fantasized experiences appearing real. Right? Talk about using your MSU. We make shit up all the time, right? You think of something. I use a simple example. I love roller coasters. I like riding the ups and downs because it pretty much equates to life in general, right? The ups and downs. So this way I can scream, woo! And that's the way I want to go through life. Now, there came a point that I stopped going on the roller coasters because all of a sudden I was making up that something was going to happen on the roller coaster. The fear became so real that I couldn't get on, that Matt would literally have to pull me on, and there were many times that I said, no, I can't do it, and I would not ride the ride. Then when I got really clear that I was making up, I was fantasizing about this, I got back on the roller coasters again and started riding them. Woo! Up and down, I would go all around. Super fun. So notice, using your MSU, what you may be making up when you're fearful of something. And you may resonate or you may not, that typically when we have fear around something, when we do step into that activity or that intention, then we actually think, what was I afraid of in the first place, right? Sometimes the fear comes from our ego, right? Our ego telling us we're too much or not enough. So know when you're using your MSU and telling yourself you're either too much or not enough, with ego, you are actually edging God out. Right? So here's how I use my MSU. I love to do it with words, right? And that helps me to remember. So I invite you to step into a place of faith as you're creating your recipe, as you're stepping into finding your sustainable joy and sharing that with the world to make the impact you want. Faith is finding answers in the heart. And from that place, magic happens. Magic happens. You are the chef of your delicious life. Choose your ingredients wisely. Thank you.